Ramusian, Merry Christmas. I am Bryan from Transylvania, and this is a Bryan from Transylvania Christmas special. We're going to take a quick look in the book of Matthew. My wife suggested to me that I do a Christmas reading, so that's what we're doing. We're going to do two Christmas readings. One is this, you'll be seeing this on Friday. The other, if my calculations are correct, you will be seen on Christmas Day of 2017, so thank you for tuning in and watching this. We're looking at the book of Matthew, looking at the birth of Jesus Christ, and I'm about to just jump right into it here. This is the account where we see that Jesus, a father not birth father, but kind of adopted father, I suppose, is given a dream about Jesus, and, well, given a dream that the angel of the Lord spoke to him in. So let's take a look at all of that and look at what Joseph was going through during this special time of prophecy being fulfilled. It's in Matthew chapter 1, verse 18. This is how the birth of Jesus came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph. But before they came together, she was a virgin. They hadn't had sex yet. She was found to be with child through the Holy Spirit. So still a virgin, but with child. That's the miracle in a nutshell. Because Joseph, her husband, was a righteous man and did not want to expose her to public disgrace, he had in mind to divorce her quietly. So, being a good man, he wasn't going to make a scandal of what was going on, but he said, "Hey, Mary, maybe we shouldn't do this, This is what he was thinking of doing. He was thinking about saying, okay, well, how else does somebody get pregnant except by being unfaithful? He didn't have an answer to that. Well, he's about to get one in verse 20. But after he had considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, "Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins." Okay, so Joseph was just let in on something really, really big. He is going to be raising God. He's going to be God's adopted dad. So with that, I suppose he probably led him into the trade of carpentry and construction. We always hear that Jesus is a carpenter, but carpenters were hired to do a lot of things in Jerusalem, and a lot of times construction was part of the deal. So let's continue. 22 in chapter 1 of Matthew. All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. The virgin will be with child and will give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God is with us. Okay, so one of the poorly thought out controversies that we see here in Matthew is, well, doesn't the word just mean young woman? We're talking about someone being conceived from spirit into the physical. So Mary's virginity is intact. This is part of the miracle. So can the word in Hebrew mean young woman? It can. But this context in the first chapter of Matthew cannot. That's the point. We're not just looking at that word and saying, "Ha, gotcha." No, it doesn't work with the context that we have in this chapter. So when you have people kind of trying to like push this idea that the word just means young woman, that's not the context that's going on here. It's very clearly, particularly not in the New Testament, in the first chapter of Matthew. We're talking about Christ being conceived in a virgin birth. That's incredibly clear to what's going on. Going from spirit to the physical, it's the miracle. This is something that's going on as a miracle. Now I'm going to keep reading, and we're going to see some other interesting things. When Joseph woke up, he did what the angel of the Lord had commanded him and took Mary home as his wife. But he had no union with her because she was pregnant, and it wouldn't have been a good time for them to be having sex. But he had no union with her until she gave birth to a son. And he gave him the name Jesus. So that implies, as we see later, that Mary and Joseph had husbandly-wife relations. We see that they had other children besides Jesus. We keep hearing about the Virgin Mary, but the Virgin Mary after Jesus did not stay a Virgin Mary anymore. She had other children. That's something important to keep in mind. Now, also in this book of Matthew, though I'm not going to go into great detail, we have Christ being visited by the Magi, these magicians, these wise men. Some have called them kings, but they probably were more like representatives of kings. I'm sure they knew kings, but these were scholars of the time. These were people who were exploring the Jewish scriptures. These were people who gazed at the stars, trying to discern what the world was telling them so that they could advise people, probably other kings. This is probably why they visited Herod on their way to meeting Jesus. Also, it's why they were able to discern what was going on in the Jewish scriptures. So it's interesting to kind of see that that these advisors, these wise men, their advice was strong enough that they would be considered magical. So I think that's interesting that God used these pagan men to celebrate Christ, to celebrate his royalty, because this is what would happen if you were to be meeting a new ruler. You would send your dignitaries in. You would send your representatives in. Governments would say, okay, this is happening. We need representation with what is going on here. And God brought that about. God enlightened these men with wisdom to come and visit Christ. I'm not going to go deeply into that. I will say one more quick note. They probably weren't there the night that Jesus was born. It was more likely that they came afterwards, after Mary and Joseph settled just a little bit, because they were no longer staying with the animals. They were apparently staying in a house at this time when the Magi had visited. So it was most likely the shepherds, who we'll see in Luke in my next Christmas special. This is part 1 of a Bryan from Transylvania Christmas special. Part 2 will be with Luke, the other account of Jesus on Christmas. So look forward to that. But yeah, the day that Christ was born, there were shepherds, there were animals, there were angels, there was a star. There were stars in the sky, most likely, but not necessarily the star that led the Magi to them. So yeah, we'll take a look at what it says about Jesus being born in the chapter 2 of Luke. And these accounts in Matthew and Luke, you kind of shuffle them together to get a picture of what happened at Christ's birth and as he was a baby. Later, it talks about how Mary and Joseph had another vision, and he fled to Egypt. Yeah, Joseph had another dream. Verse 13, chapter 2, when they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Get up, he said, take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him. So that is interesting right there. He has another vision from the angel of the Lord, and this is in regards to the child's safety. God made himself vulnerable. Now, I think that's one of the things that we have to look at when we look at Jesus' humanity, is he brought himself into our level of things. We are very, very below God in this fleshly state, but we're still made in the image of God. And through Jesus, we can actually see how that's supposed to be properly reflected. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this Bryan Christmas special. Keep checking out these videos. I'm going through 2 Corinthians right now. I still have to make a playlist of 1 Corinthians, but I hope you enjoyed that. Like, share, and subscribe. And Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night.